Hi, this is Barry here, and you're very, very welcome to today's podcast episode from WriteCome.com. And today we're going to have a look at how to write a how-to book. Now, what I like about how-to books, not only as a buyer of them myself, when you go to Amazon and you look at the book title and it says, how to add 1,000 followers in your Instagram account, or how to lose 30 pounds in the next 30 days, or whatever it is, you look at that book and you say, wow, that's a result that I want to get. And, because of that, you're going to be immediately attracted to it. If you need to get those Instagram followers, if you need to lose that weight, this book title is giving you the end result that you're looking for. So in a way, how-to books are easier to sell that way because, as long as you can fulfill the promise that is in your book title, your reader is going to jump at the chance to buy it. And another benefit of how-to books, not only on the reader side, but on your side as well then too, there's nothing more motivating than knowing that you're making a difference in someone's life. For example, if you showed someone how to set up a home-based business or whatever it is, the difference you're going to make in that person's life. If you showed someone how they could double their earnings in the next 30 days or whatever, if you imagine the difference you're going to make in that person's life with their kids and, the free time they're going to have and maybe not have to do the job that they do or that they hate going to, and, your book is making the difference in someone's life, it can be very, very inspiring on your own side. For example, if you wrote maybe a book on how to lose 30 pounds in the next 30 days, if you consider the difference maybe you made, maybe an obese parent maybe who all of a sudden loses that weight then, and the difference is in their life then too, the difference in their health and how they're able to interact with their kids and go out and play with them and all those different things. Not only is it a how-to book, inspiring on your side, but it can make a big difference in people's lives. And that's one thing I like about how-to books, not only as a buyer, but as someone who writes them as well too. And again, too, even I've written content for my blog over on the WriteCome site. It's inspiring to think that maybe that blog post that you were writing is making a big difference in someone's life and making a change. So that's one thing I love about how-to books, and I highly recommend, before I actually dip into the content, maybe it would be as well to pause this episode because we're going to cover a lot of things and maybe you might need a pen and paper to take down some of the information, some of the points that we're going to go through. So as long as you have that pen and paper ready, or you're going to listen to this podcast episode again, I'll get started. So the first thing you need to consider when it comes to your how-to book, you need to consider what content you're going to add to your book. For example, photographs. Are you going to provide something maybe it's going to back up the claims? For example, if you're going to say, well, I am going to help you double your earnings in the next 60 days or whatever it is, have you considered maybe adding screenshots of checks or something like that can prove that you are the person that they need to be following? If you have doubled your Instagram followers and you made it, you got 1,000 people following you in 30 days, if you had a snapshot of that in your book, not only is it a great kind of visual testimonial, but it gives the reader confidence that you know what you're talking about. If you had maybe a before and after photograph at the start of your book where someone's lost a ton load of weight, straight away after, when you just open that book and you've come to some picture like that, it's going to make the reader think, wow, this is the person that I need to follow. They seem to know what they're talking about. And, they're going to be excited to get into your book. So consider maybe adding some of those, photographs or something like that. It's going to back up the claim, not just text, because it'll break up the text a little bit, but, it's going to add more value to your book by adding that. Now, not only photographs, have you considered maybe adding diagrams, or will you need diagrams to explain some of the more complicated things? Although, somebody's going to be reading your book, some people are more visual learners, and by adding a diagram or an illustration, not only can it save you maybe, writing out a couple of paragraphs, which, are hard to explain, but to add maybe a diagram now, could you save yourself from writing that content? Or is it going to kind of make the actions kind of crystal clear? You need to add maybe snapshots or screen captures or something like that, which is going to show the reader how they're going to go step by step by step, that they can't make any mistake. And it's going to reinforce whatever you're teaching. So maybe do you need to consider maybe getting diagrams or something like that created for your book? Now, although your book is going to be written in text, have you considered maybe text instructions? How are you going to break down the complicated actions? How are you going to do the process? It's going to be step 1, step 2, or what way you need to do. Because again, not everybody who's going to be coming to your book is going to be, at the same level that you're at. You're going to be getting beginners maybe who've never read a book on the topic that you're writing on. And because of that, then you're going to need to step way back to what a beginner would need to know. Possibly maybe you need to add maybe a glossary page where you're going to have to glossary of terms. Like, for example, is there acronyms in the business that you're working in? Is there slang words that people are using all the time that people in the industry know about, but an outsider mightn't have a clue about? Any insider terms and all that. It's a small thing, but again, if you are a beginner and you're coming to a book and you're constantly mentioning this HIIT, and somebody doesn't know that that's high intensity interval training, they're going to be scratching their head and they're going to be lost. But if you kind of step way back and break it down to the beginner levels and add all that content in as well too, you're going to make your book more rounded, not just for beginners but people who are further along with their knowledge. And because as I said, you don't know where that person is when they're getting your book, so make sure that you have all those things, and it provides and makes your book kind of more well-rounded, that it'll cover a bigger audience, so not just the advanced but also the beginner. So then once you have considered those things, how about the layout? When it comes to font, what font are you going to use on your book? Now you may think, well, that doesn't really matter because I'm maybe going to print my book, or maybe I'm just printing off giving away maybe PDF documents of my book or whatever it is. But if you are maybe going to the Kindle market and maybe you are going to sell your book on e-readers, have you considered maybe how that fancy font maybe that you have, maybe it might show up and look really good on the latest version of the Kindle Fire or whatever. But again, not everybody's going to have the latest version of the Kindle Fire. Maybe some people have the very basic Kindle, the very first one that came out, and if you format your book in a way that is going to look great on one, maybe you need to consider maybe how is it going to look on the basic Kindle. Maybe that book that looks great in print is just going to be all jumbled, and maybe the formatting isn't going to look so great on it. So maybe you can consider maybe how you're going to format your book maybe for an e-reader. Maybe you need to kind of step back and break it back to the basic structure. And again, same goes for your headings and subheadings. Have you considered maybe how you are maybe go for a different font in the subheadings? Are they going to be bolded? Are they going to be indented or whatever it is? Because when you are looking at a page of text, sometimes breaking down the subheadings and arranging them in different ways, whether it's italics or bold or all those things are going to make it easier to read. For example, if you have ever maybe read one of those For Dummies books, you may have seen sections of the chapter where there's a small section and there's a symbol beside it saying beginner, pay attention to this, or very important information. So maybe you should consider maybe having some of those things too in your chapters too, when your readers reading through it, that they're looking, and because you are highlighting that section, that important to read section, or you have a symbol that then they can they come to, they'll know straight away, well, I need to pay important attention to this, or this is a beginner thing that I need to know. And maybe this is something you need to consider in your book layout. And again then too, what about your chapters? How will you end each chapter? Are you going to do like a highlight reel if everything was covered? Are you going to open the chapter with this is what we are going to cover in this section, and then go into it, and then finally close that chapter off with, these are all the points that we covered in the chapter? Are you going to close that chapter with maybe a summary section, like this is what we've covered? Are you going to close this chapter with maybe questions where you're going to ask them questions about things that happened in the chapter, and it'll help kind of reinforce that knowledge? So then if you were going to add maybe a question section to that book, do you need to add maybe white space or a couple of pages after the chapter where they can sit down and actually take notes, or they can do the exercises that you have put in the chapter? Again then too, as I said before, pay attention to maybe a beginner section. Maybe when it comes to the chapter, maybe you could do the first start of the chapter maybe as a beginner section and mark it out as a beginner section. Not only will it help the beginner to get up to speed and what they need to know in that chapter, but someone who maybe is more advanced then will look at the start of that chapter and say, okay, this is the beginner section, I don't need to read this, and it helps them get through the book quickly and gets them to they can easily skim through the chapter and find the content that they want, and not get bogged down reading maybe content that is tailored to a beginner audience that they don't need. And then when it comes to the chapter breakdown then, are you going to cover too much in a chapter? You need to, for example, again, going back to beginners then, sometimes giving somebody maybe too many action steps to take in each chapter can seem, too overwhelming. So do you need to break the chapters down kind of, because sometimes it's better off just to give that reader kind of one action to take in each chapter. Now, of course, maybe it will drive your chapter counters up because you are breaking down bit by bit by bit. But, by giving somebody maybe one action that they need to do in each chapter, they don't feel overwhelmed, and once they get that small action done, it gives them a little bit of confidence that that they're working and they're making progress, rather than giving them maybe too many things to cover in one chapter, and a lot of it maybe bypasses over their head, and they don't do all the steps that are needed to do whatever process you're trying to teach them. So maybe having a look at your chapter 2 and breaking it down to one point at a time maybe can help them not be overwhelmed and take action on the content that you're given. So then it comes to the book layout, structuring your book. Now you probably know from reading how-to books, you have a foreword, you have an introduction, you have the chapters, and then you usually have a summary or whatever it is. So how are you going to work out the layout of your book? For example, now your foreword, are you going to have a foreword in your book? It could be maybe an introductory paragraph or chapter saying, I would like to thank all the following people, or this book came about because such and such a thing. Or maybe you're going to open it up with testimonials, reviews, or maybe a word from a maybe well-known person in your niche that is going to kind of, before the person gets into your book, it puts them in a positive frame that, that what you're talking about, that you are the go-to person, that, you have, helped all these people with all these testimonials that have proven that you're the person, and, it's going to get them excited that this is the right book that they bought. Because again, you never know if somebody's going to read in your book maybe on a Kindle reader, or maybe they've just taken your book off the bookshelf in the local store, and by having a good foreword like that, maybe with loads of reviews and loads of testimonials, it's going to make them say, wow, this is the book I need, because it looks so fantastic. I haven't got time to read it now, but I'm going to take this up to the till straight away and purchase this book because this person seems to know what they're talking about. There's so many testimonials. Yeah, I know this well-known person that's written the foreword of this book, so this is the book that I need to get. So maybe you should have a foreword in that, maybe not just as an introductory paragraph, or maybe testimonials and reviews and stuff like that, to get that person in the right positive frame of mind that you are the person they need to read. Another one then too is, after the foreword, is the introduction. Again, you could have that as the very start of your book if you didn't want to have the foreword. Not only does it show the reader what they'll gain from reading your book, you could do a quick summary and say, well, by reading this book we are going to cover this and this and this, and I am going to get you from the position of being an absolute beginner to having 1,000 followers on Instagram, or I'm going to have you £30 lighter in 30 days from now. Again, in the introduction, you may need to mention any kind of equipment or any other, any other things that they will need to have to get their hands on, to get the most from this book. Or maybe you're going to tell them where they can get all the stuff free, rather than having to, maybe other people have said, oh, you need to buy this expensive software, you need to sign up to this, or you need to sign up to, and if you cover all those things, straight away that person knows then, because at the end of the day, they don't want to get maybe halfway in the book and come to this chapter and then you mention this software that they need, and they're going to say, well, where did this come out of? If you kind of add all this stuff at the very beginning, it sets your reader up that they know exactly what they need to do, and if they'll be able to do it. And again, because as your audience may be beginners, break down exactly what they will be covering, because you want them to know that you are, that this book is also for beginners, because you have the glossary of terms and you have everything covered, so that you're going to open your net to a wider audience, and you're going to have all those beginner readers as well too, because you're going to be saying to them, well, this is also for beginners too. Don't make the mistake that it's just for advanced people, because I have all the beginner tips added as well too. So then we're going to have the chapter section. Again, as I spoke earlier about, in your chapter section, are you going to have a summary at the beginning of your chapter? How are you going to have a summary at the end of it? How are your chapters going to go? Are you going to have like a little quiz at the end of it? Are you going to have sections where people are going to have to, fill it in? And again too, are you going to have like a beginner section at the start where the advanced readers can just bypass that and move on? And then, finally you're going to come to the end of the book, then you're going to finish up. So at the end of after all the chapters, then when it comes to your summary, again, it's very important to go over everything that you've covered in the book and kind of reinforce what the reader has learned now that they're in the book. Here again, you can add testimonials. You can give like a little bit of a pep talk, because even though the person may have read your book, they're going to say to themselves, wow, he's laid it out okay, but I still don't think I'm the type of person that can have another 1,000 followers on Instagram in the next 30 days, or I'm not the type of person, I've tried to lose weight so many times, and even though he's laid it all out in the book, or she's laid it all out in the book, and it sounds fantastic, I still haven't got the confidence that I can do it. So sometimes having maybe testimonials from people in that situation, where you kind kind of boost their confidence, say, go on, yeah, you can do it because this person's done it, and this person didn't believe in himself, and he's got that 1,000 followers, or he's doubled his income, or whatever it is, by having that additional information at the end, because that is the final chance. Because once the reader probably closed the book, for a lot, maybe they mightn't actually take action on it because they feel that they don't have what it takes. And this is your chance to give them that kind of pat in the back and say, yes, go on, you can do it, I believe in you, because all these other people did it, and you're no different from these people. So how are you going to finish your book? What way are you going to finish it up? You're going to get that kind of pep talk, testimonials, or whatever it is. Because people, even though they've read all the content of your book, some people will lack the confidence themselves and won't believe maybe that they can't do it. Now, of course, while everything I've said in this podcast here isn't compulsory, not only does it have a book layout like what I've talked through in this podcast episode, not only does it give you a firm kind of roadmap of what you need to tackle in your book, because I know for myself sometimes that if I don't kind of follow a set pattern, sometimes I might go into a chapter and then I go off on a tangent and I go way off over here, and and then all of a sudden, when it comes to finally putting the book together, I said to myself, that doesn't really need to be needed. I cut that out, and by having the layout before you begin, it breaks it down into bit by bit. You can say, right, I'll do the introduction today. Chapter 1 is going to need this and this and this and this. So then it gives you an idea. Then sometimes it can be very overwhelming to write a how-to book, because when you're starting off, you say, oh God, I don't know what I need to be putting in it. But by having the layout like that, you can say, right, I'm going to work on chapter 1 here. I am going to work on and today I'm going to do the 5 steps of setting up an Instagram account, or whatever it is. And by having that, then it's motivating. Then you're ticking all those things off your list as you're working along. And by the time you get to the end of the book, then you'll have it done before you may think, God, I'll never get through this. But by having this checklist and the book layout, again, you can tick all these marks off, and before you know it, you'll have your how-to book written. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Again, you may need to listen to this episode a couple of times just to get everything down, and I highly recommend maybe that you should have a pen and paper, because again, there's been a lot in this podcast episode compared to some of the other ones that I've done before. So if you enjoyed this episode, I'd really, really appreciate it if you would share it with one more person, or just tweet about it on your Twitter account, or like it on Facebook, or just tell people where you've learned the information from. It would be really, really helpful to me. Now, when you do write that how-to book, of course, you're going to want to sell as many copies as you can. So that's why I recommend you come on over to the WriteCome site. So if you go over to WriteCome.com, I have a great free report over there at the moment, and it is called Words, Wisdom and Winning. And I've got some great secret tricks and tips you can use to get that your how-to book into as many people's hands as possible, and it'll save you money and mistakes that I had made previously before. So if you want to come over to the site and pick that up, you're very, very welcome. So as always, thanks for sharing your time with me again today, and take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.